Hi everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Marie Hopkins. I was born hard of hearing, and the hearing loss that I have is genetic. It is also degenerative, so that means that I'll lose more hearing as I get older. I know God has a purpose in making me this way, as I am. And I'm excited about where God has been leading me.
Amen.
I'm thankful for this opportunity to share with you about my involvement in deaf ministry. So I'll start with a sign. There is one sign that is nearly universal, so it's the same everywhere in the world, and that's Jesus. So you use your middle fingers, and you put them in like this. You do this with one hand, and this with the other hand. And that's representing the nails in the hands. That's where it's from. Maybe you've never thought about it before, but at some time in your lifetime, you will most likely meet a deaf person. And we have Sarah with us today, so you'll definitely meet one today if you haven't before. Many deaf people who rely on sign language to communicate have families who have never learned how to sign and have very limited communication with their families and other people. So how will they receive the gospel, and would you be able to share the gospel with them? So I've got a PowerPoint that I'd like to share today. Just wait for that to be ready. There we go. I'm glad someone took the time to make sure that I understood the gospel. I first heard it clearly preached when I was in university, and I am thankful for the ministry of the Christian Union, which I was involved with at that time. I was at university completing a Bachelor of Science, majoring in microbiology. After I was qualified, I had a well-paying job as a microbiologist for several years. A friend asked me at the time if God had ever called me to do anything specific with my life. And I told her about a time when I had visited the Northern Territory on a school trip. And we were visiting a tiny little town called Nooka, which is in far northern Australia. You can see it in the map. And it was there, sitting outside this tiny little church on the desert ground, that God called me to be an Auslan interpreter and to work with the deaf. And with this prompting from my friend, I knew that I needed to leave my microbiology work to pursue his calling on my life. In 2013, I went on a missions trip to the Solomon Islands with a deaf ministry team for the first time. While we were there, Mary Fuller, a missionary to the deaf, presented the gospel to some of the local deaf, and something about the simple visual presentation really struck me. Later that day, I read through the book of Romans, and Robert Gunter, also a missionary to the deaf, had shared the Romans road with me, and that preparation helped me to understand. I came to a full understanding that there was nothing I could do to deserve God's grace, and that it was a free gift that I could not possibly earn. It was a relief to come to a fuller understanding of this important truth. I had had lingering doubts and questions about faith, but on this day I prayed and asked for forgiveness for my sin and my rebellion, and asked God to save me. Since that day, I have had a lasting peace. And I actually took this photo at the time. That's what I could see while I was reading my Bible that day. I previously attended Calvary Baptist Church in Melbourne, and now I am an active member of Westburn Baptist Church, which is this little church here. They are now my sending church, and I am really thankful for both of these churches with their strong foundational teaching and their support of me as a new missionary. I'd like to share a video presentation with you as well, so I might sit down for that and I'll come back up. Hello. Thank you for this opportunity to share the ministry God has laid on my heart. My name is Marie Hopkins. I was born here in Melbourne, Australia. I have mostly lived here, but as a young child, my family lived in Belgium for 3 years. In 2008, I completed a Bachelor of Science. After I qualified, I had a well-paid job as a microbiologist. I heard the gospel preached clearly when I was in university. In 2012, I started attending Calvary Baptist Church. I'm thankful for this church with its strong foundational teaching. In 2013, I had peace and assurance about my salvation. I'm thankful for understanding and receiving God's grace and for His free gift of salvation that I could not possibly earn. I resigned from my science work to pursue God's calling, to become an Auslan, Australian Sign Language, interpreter. That was a big step of faith, as I relied on savings while I studied. I also have a genetic hearing loss myself. I completed my studies and became a qualified Auslan interpreter. Since then, I have been working in that field. I have also been studying through the Victorian Baptist Bible College, and I have found it to be invaluable. God has been continuing to show me more of who He is, how to share the gospel with others, and how to lead and disciple them.
I'm John Olson, missionary to the deaf worldwide. I have served the Lord for over 30 years in deaf ministry. 2 years ago, the Lord laid on my heart to start a new ministry, Go Deaf Missions. The purpose of Go Deaf Missions is to travel to foreign countries, to come alongside of missionaries and foreign national pastors and teach them how to reach the deaf of their communities with the gospel and make them effective disciples of Jesus Christ. When a missionary from Liberia contacted us to say he didn't know what to do with 35 deaf that started coming to his church, I knew God wanted me to take a new approach. I started Go Deaf Missions in order to provide a practical solution to a real problem. Right now, 19 missionaries are waiting for us to come and help them in some capacity. Go Deaf Missions is a team approach to missions. Matthew 9:38 says, "Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest that He will send forth laborers into His harvest." We are praying that God will give us a team of specialized people who are missions-minded, proficient in sign language, knowledgeable about deaf culture, and capable of adapting to various foreign cultures. Eventually, we hope to have several teams we can send to different countries at the same time. In addition to my wife Tricia, our 2 adopted children, David and Amanda, and me, Paul Mosley and Anna Gilkey are already a part of our team. In 2018, our team partnered with Robert Gunter and the Deaf Ministry of Calvary on a missions trip to the Solomon Islands. Marie was part of the Australian team. During that trip, she approached us with questions about Go Deaf Missions, and she expressed interest in working with our team. We were especially interested in Marie because we had specifically prayed God would bring someone to the team who could help us with photography. Over the past year, Tricia and I have communicated with Marie on a regular basis, discussing her personal life, education, Bible knowledge, and her involvement in her local church. We believe, and Marie believes, that God is leading her to be a part of the Go Deaf Missions team. Earlier this year, we invited Marie to participate on our missions trip to Peru. The trip was 5 weeks long. We traveled to 4 cities, and I preached in 8 churches. Marie worked well with us. She was ready and willing to step in anywhere she could. She maintains a positive attitude and has the flexibility needed for the work of missions. An important dynamic of the Go team is that each member is willing to do what it takes to help other members be successful. But sometimes it means taking a job that no one really wants. We never had to explain that to Marie. She came ready to serve. After the trip, we were even more convinced that we wanted to have Marie on our team. As soon as we have raised our full support, we will begin making continuous consecutive mission trips to help missionaries build deaf ministries. We will stay up to 3 months, the length of a tourist visa, with a missionary. The Go team will train him and his people in sign language, teach them about deaf culture, help them find the deaf, and start sharing the gospel with the deaf community. In some places, missionaries are already reaching the deaf, and we will help them strengthen their ministry through teaching and preaching. We believe it will be easier for Marie to raise support when pastors understand that she will be working under a seasoned pastor and missionary in a team effort to reach a forgotten people. It is my desire to ensure that Go Deaf Missions be a blessing and never a financial burden to any missionary. We ask our team members to raise enough to ensure that they will not regularly encounter financial hardships and be able to help other missionaries in need as the Lord brings opportunity. We look forward to having Marie be a part of our team full-time, bringing the gospel to the deaf worldwide. I pray that you and your church will consider supporting Marie for deaf missions. If there is any more information you need, please contact us. Thank you.
I first met our team, Go Deaf Missions, in 2018, when they came to help with a missions project in the Solomon Islands. Go Deaf Missions was founded by John Olson and his wife Tricia. John is profoundly deaf himself. They have over 30 years of experience serving in deaf ministry. They have been praying for team members to help them in particular areas. Looking back on my life, I can see that God was preparing me before I met them. God has equipped me with many of the skills and gifts that they were looking for, including my fluency in Auslan and understanding of deaf culture, my missions experience with multiple trips in the Solomon Islands, photography, computer skills, proofreading skills, and administration skills. In 2019, I travelled to Peru with the Go Deaf team for 5 weeks. The trip was a true blessing. It helped to confirm for everyone that I was a good fit for the team. Through our online weekly team meetings, we have been able to continue to encourage one another as we prepare to travel and serve together as a team. Deaf ministry is truly unique. Deaf people are among the least reached populations of the world. The World Health Organization have stated that over 430 million people have significant hearing loss, including profound deafness. For the deaf, sign language is the most accessible form of communication. Many have low-level literacy skills. Regular methods of sharing the gospel, like radio or TV programs or tracts, are not accessible to them. Our Go Deaf team help missionaries already serving on the field and their churches to learn their local sign language and about deaf culture, and equip them to share the gospel with the deaf. Sign languages are different all over the world. Here in Australia, our alphabet uses both hands. American Sign Language has a one-handed alphabet. Between the two languages, there are very few signs in common. Please prayerfully consider supporting me as the Lord leads you. It has been a challenging wait, as lockdowns have prevented opportunities to present in churches, especially with restricted travel. I am thankful for the privilege of God working through me. I would love to join our team in person when doors to travel start opening up. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? Romans 10:14. In his service, Marie Hopkins.
Okay, I want to see you item now. Are you ready? Okay, so start now. Thus is the Lord with all your hands.
Can we go back to the PowerPoint? Sorry. Give me a workout over there. Thank you. Thank you. This video was originally prepared a while ago, and there are some updates I'd like to share with everyone. One of the most significant things that has happened is that since producing the video, Paul Mosley, who was mentioned, has actually passed away. just over a year ago, he was a big help to John and Trisha and was a very faithful helper in practical ways. He was a wonderful soul winner and made friends wherever he went. He is very much missed by our team, and I am thankful for his passion for sharing the gospel with deaf people and ensuring that they could also have access to understanding it clearly. And this is a quote from him, that the deaf may have lost their hearing, but they shouldn't have to lose their souls. And there's a picture of him in the back. As mentioned in the video, I have had several opportunities to be involved with missionary trips to minister with deaf people on the Solomon Islands. At times, it can be very sobering to compare the lives of deaf people in a third world country compared to those living here in Australia. When I've been there, I have taught young deaf children there how to spell their own names and also their family members' names, and these are a couple of those children. I've also met deaf adults there who have never had any language, either signed or spoken. So it's really hard to imagine not being able to communicate such basic information. Churches have reached most of the world with missionaries, but most have no capacity to reach the deaf, and I'm excited to be part of a ministry team that are reaching the deaf with the gospel. These are the countries that we have been, the Go Deaf team have been contacted by missionaries and pastors in over 20 countries who have asked us for help with ministering to their local deaf people. We're intending to visit roughly 4 countries a year, so for about 3 months at a time. And I'll be joining the team for 6 weeks, Lord willing, in a couple of weeks. Sign languages are different in every country, and they all have their own unique signs. One example, as I mentioned in the video, is that Australia has a 2-handed alphabet, and we would say A, B, C. But in America, they use A, B, C, and so they're entirely different. There are very few signs in common between the languages, and then Japanese sign language is entirely different again. Having team members with experience in different sign languages from around the world helps us to be adaptable in communicating with deaf people in every country we visit. So I've been talking a lot, and I thought it would be good to teach you some signs and teach you a little bit about Auslan, and a little bit about deaf culture and what that's about as well. So when we are learning sign language, it helps us to understand how each sign is formed. There are parameters of the signs, and the acronym HOLME, H-O-L-M-E, helps us to know and remember each aspect of every sign. So the hand shape, we say hand shape. Then there's orientation, which is where your palms are facing. There's location, which is where it is on the body. There's movement. And then there's expression. So a lot of signs need expression to make sense. So the non-manual features is everything that's happening with your body that helps to give a sign meaning as well. So I'll give you some examples of why these are so important. So for hand shape, this is work and this is talk. So the only thing that's changing is that hand shape, but it has a different meaning. For orientation, this is ready and this is start. So you can say ready and start. For location, this is what and this is today. For movement, this is water and funny. And expression, like doubt or just wait with a plain face. This is just for fun. So this shows how important it is to have an expression when you're talking about feelings. So if you say, oh, I'm really happy, it doesn't make sense. Happy. So yeah, I thought that'd be fun. I'll teach you some basic signs. So this is hello or goodbye. My name. Your name, what? how are you? So you're actually asking if somebody's health is good. How are you? You say good, excited, tired, pleased to meet you. So this is actually the other person, and this is me, and we're meeting. That's how that happens. Deaf, 2 fingers, deaf, and hearing. You say, how, sign. So it's like HW, but you do it with the back of the hand, so it's how, sign. Thank you, or please. Yes, and no. Slow. Again. Sorry. Finish. And watch. So these are just some really basic signs that can get you started in a conversation. I do have a handout that I think will be given out today, and that has some links where you can look up signs online if you want to refresh your memory of anything we've just been through very quickly today. This is just a very brief explanation of how to ask questions. So you need to look like you're asking a question. So you have that sort of questioning face. The question signs are what? Why? Who? When? Where? And which? How? What for? Or how old? How many? How much? And how far? And I'll teach you a very quick memory verse. Are we ready? It says, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel, so G story, gospel, to all people. And if you're right-handed, you'll generally point and use this hand as your dominant hand. And if you're left-handed, you'll swap over. And it's important to stay with that and not swap them too much. This is the alphabet, which if anyone wants to learn the alphabet, you can come and talk to me afterwards and we'll go through it together. There's some cards downstairs that have the alphabet in pictures that you can use to practice at home too. So this is just a little bit of an explanation about what's different about deaf people and what's different about hearing people. So deaf people see deafness very differently to how hearing people see deafness. So generally, deaf people will see themselves as a linguistic minority. So that means they see themselves as not disabled, but they just have a language in common that they happen to use. And if a hearing person comes to a deaf group that are all signing, it's really the hearing person who's disabled and can't access that situation. So they see it quite differently. Whereas obviously from a hearing perspective, it's generally seen as a medical condition that needs to be fixed. So there can be a bit of a disconnect, and it's important to understand that when you're talking with deaf people to know that there's a different perspective. There's a collective culture. So what that's about is that when a deaf person goes overseas, for example, and they meet another deaf person, they're a very tight-knit group, and they'll often be adopted into that other person's house and quite freely and openly. So it's actually a very kind of nice community in that sense. If you go to a party with deaf people, it's going to take a really long time to leave. So generally people will come up to you and they say, oh, I'm leaving now. And then you'll see that they're actually there 45 minutes still saying goodbye to people. So that's just another part of the culture. Skills bartering. So often if one deaf person has a skill and they need something done, perhaps on their car, and they know that there's a mechanic, they might say, oh, I can paint your house if you'll fix my car. And that sort of thing happens a lot too. And also, if one deaf person knows about a situation, they'll often share that information with the community in a way that's accessible to other deaf people. Deaf people can be quite direct, so they can often say things kind of bluntly from a hearing perspective. And there's often a lot of visual information about medical conditions or about things like that. And that can be a bit confronting for a hearing person who's not used to that kind of communication. And they'll often ask you personal questions like, how much did you spend on this thing? Or, what do you think about religion? Which often, might be a bit controversial in other settings. Or, they'll just ask you different questions that you generally wouldn't ask in the hearing community. And they can tend to be sort of black and white concrete thinkers. These are all sort of stereotypes, if you like, so this is not true for everybody, but it's just things that you'll often find. And more of a funny one, you'll often find at a party the deaf people are always in the kitchen because there's bright light there, as well as that's where the food is. But they'll often kind of block the doorways, and that happens in our church all the time. We are blocking the access between the kitchen and the church because that's where the interpreter seats are, and we all just tend to congregate there and stay there. That's actually the end of my presentation, so I hope that... Sorry? I can go over the signs again. Would we like to do that? Okay. How much time do I have left? 10, 15 minutes. Okay, cool. Let's do this a bit slower then. All right, so we've got hello and bye, or bye. My name. Your name. What? How are you? Good. Excited. And then tired. Pleased. So pleased to meet you. So the other person should be over here, and you're here, and you're coming into the middle. This is deaf. So 2 fingers like this, handshake, deaf. And then hearing is the pointer handshake, hearing. And then how, sign. Thank you. Please. Yes. No. Then slow. Again. So this shape. Again. Sorry. Finished. Or finish. If you're asking the question, you finished. And watch. So you're watching someone else, or you're asking them to watch you. Watch. And the question signs again. So we've got what? Why? Who? When? Where? Which? How? What for? I like this one, it's fun. What for? How old? How many? How much? Don't do it too big, but how much? And how far? So HW and then far. Okay, so go, you, into, all, world, preach, the gospel to all people. And then I might go through the alphabet because we've got a little bit of time. So the vowels are A, E, I, O, U. So your right hand is a pointer, just like this. And your left hand will be doing this. So you've got A, E, I, O, and U. So you've got A, B, C with your right hand, D, E, the vowel. F, this is this shape. And then G. So usually your right hand's on top. H, I, the middle vowel. J, so like this, J. K. So this hand is your pointer now, and you're doing a little hook on it with a K. L, so L, you're doing like that, but you face towards you. And then you've got M and N. So it's like you're writing L's, you've got L, and then you've got M with 3 strokes, and then N with 2. So it's L, M, N. O is your fourth vowel. P. So again, your left hand's the index, and you do the P. Q. R, so a little hook. S is your little fingers, like this. T. U is your last vowel. V. V. W. X. Y. On the outside. And Z. So that's the alphabet. But we can practice that after. Or should we go through one more time? Would you like to go through again? So we've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q. Q's a little bit hard, so you're doing this handshake, like the perfect handshake with your left hand, and you're using your pointer to put it there. We've got R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y on the outside, and Z. Okay. And thank you so much for having me here today, and it's just a real privilege to be able to share with you about this burden that God laid on my heart, and just to be able to share it with people is great for me, so thank you. Oh, absolutely. If anyone does have any questions they'd like to ask me. Yeah? Canberra. It actually has a sign. It's the same sign as capital, but in context, this means Canberra. So good question. Spelling Queen Bien, it takes a long time. Yeah. Any other questions?
What kind of hurdles do you go through in trying to get a deaf person to understand the connection between the signs?
So between signs, like when they're growing up and learning, or when they're older and learning a new sign?
Yes.
So it's similar to a hearing person. You just need to unpack what that word means. So you'll be using a lot of signs to explain the concept, and then you attach the sign to that concept. So it's similar to how hearing people learn a new concept.
And what about someone like you met where they have not really ever had any?
So if they don't have any language, so what we've done in the Solomon Islands is we've used like special pictures, and we have big books that have pictures that explain sort of the cross and sin and things like that, and we use that to help to explain it, and we'll be using lots of gestures and hoping that the message gets across. So it's important with deaf communities, if you're overseas, you may actually be teaching the deaf their language to help them to understand, and then when they have a foundation in language to start with, then you can actually start to share the gospel. So they do need some understanding and some language first.
So is there like there's 2 language barriers? If you're going to another country that doesn't speak English or doesn't speak Aus or doesn't use Auslan, you're translating into a different oral language and then a different sign language as well? How do you manage that?
That's true. That's tricky. So we'll be working with the local people. So we'll be working with the local churches and the local deaf as well. And so we'll be really teaching their deaf how to share their language. So often a deaf person knows their language well, but they don't know how to teach it. So we'll give them the basic structures and things like that HOLME thing that I showed you before. That's true for all languages, even though the sign languages are different. Those rules apply for all of them. So they maybe have different hand shapes that are normal for their sign language, but you can still learn what those are and teach them. So it'll be a real partnership that happens with everyone there.
So in places like the Solomon Islands, they don't have their own sign language, so you teach Auslan?
So in the Solomon Islands, they have a deaf school now that's been there for quite a while. So it's mostly like Auslan, but it's evolved and they have their own sign for things that we don't have here, like the fruit and different things like that. So we go and we learn their signs, but a lot of it is similar for us. So that means it's more accessible for us as missionaries to be working with them. So they do have their own signs. What's happened is one lady came and studied at Monash, and then she went back and set up like a special school for all different disabilities and deafness. And then another group, it's actually a Catholic group, has set up the secondary school that's on one island. So it depends if the deaf people have had the opportunity to go to that school or not. Yeah, so that's why we still meet people in villages that are far away that have not been to that school. So it really depends what their life experience has been and where they've gone to school and if they've been to school at all. Yeah.
Do you find deaf people easier or more difficult or the same to understand gospel message or accepting gospel message?
That again really depends on their education, but also like deaf people, like hearing people, are often very resistant to the gospel. You know, they still are going to school and they're still learning ideas about evolution and about, you know, human rights and everything, and those ideas are still making them resistant to hearing about the gospel. So it's similar issues that way as well. Yeah.
So you've been doing deaf language all your life, but you know, for the average person, if I came to live with you and you know that's all we could do, how many years would it take for someone like me to do what you do and to be effective?
Well, I actually haven't grown up all my life signing. So I grew up, they call it an oral education. So I just relied on lip reading and using technology to help me hear better. So I didn't start signing until I did Auslan in year 11 and 12. So I knew the alphabet before that, but really not much. And even at that time, I didn't have fluency. So I learnt a lot of vocab, but I didn't have the ability to, you know, communicate with someone fluently. So it's not until I went to TAFE and studied for the 2 years in 2013-14 that I could sign well. They say that, like any other language, it's usually about 7 years to become fully fluent, and you still won't sign like someone who's grown up signing their whole life. Because I think in English and then I translate, so it's still different. But you can have a basic conversation and have enough in 2 weeks to really start, you know, meeting a deaf person and being able to talk to them. And then you can use those kind of signs like, how do you sign this? And you just build up your language over time. So you can have a good foundation in a couple of weeks. And that's what we'll be doing when we go over to other countries. We'll be giving them the foundation in the language, and then they'll be partnering with the deaf community to continue to learn the language and improve their skills, and then they'll be able to interpret, and they'll keep improving. Yeah. I think we're happy to wrap up. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.